Greetings, family. This is Brother Ron. You are listening to and watching We All Be News, News Free Dixie for the 21st century. Can you dig it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. See, they did that on purpose, right? They be playing, man. Yes, sir. But the media is the most unchecked power. It's more dangerous than the executive branch or legislative because it's an unchecked power.
Can
It's
you
an
hear
unchecked
me?
power. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
I'm gonna duck out and come right back in.
Okay. Yes, sir. But I know President Nixon, after he retired, he talked about the dangers of the media, how it has unchecked power, like even with the executive branch, legislative, judicial, there are checks and balances. But with the media, they can run with anything. Like Brother Malcolm X would say, the media is the most powerful entity on the planet because it influences the minds of the masses. They'll make your friend your enemy and your enemy your friend, or they'll project that. So that narrative piece is very important because you remember when J.D. Vance, the vice presidential nominee for the Republican ticket, he was on CNN with Dana Bash. And they were talking about the immigrant dog, cat, geese, duck story. And Dana was trying to imply that they made that up. And but J.D. Vance to me was saying that he's the senator from Ohio, and they were talking about the Springfield, Ohio situation with the immigrants. And he said we had to create a story. He didn't say they lied. See, that's the thing. People don't know how to discern. He said we had to create the story because we tried to get traction about what was going on in that community with the immigration, with the immigrants, with the illegals. But we had to create a story to get the media's attention so they could start digging more deeper into the issue. And the media is propaganda, it's Operation Mockingbird. A lot of people should know CIA has been involved heavily in the media and controlling narratives. There's a lot of money dumped into Hollywood to tell certain movies, narratives, and stuff like that. Even with your so-called legacy media, you have a situation where, for example, I even remember 60 Minutes some years ago where they talked about how some of their top media consultants at 60 Minutes were CIA connection, were CIA connected, excuse me, Central Intelligence Agency connected. Or you think about the movie scripts that get approved that's very pro US, whatever. You gotta be very careful how you portray the US and a lot of popular media and whatnot. But see, we get Judge. Judge, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you again.
All right, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So
Okay.
I'm trying to tell people they do this by design. They want to control and tell a certain narrative, and you pushing back on a narrative, and you having very much a great effect and influence. And I just want to talk about that influence, especially as it relates to the Diddy situation. I'm sure if they were smart, his legal team should hire you directly and deal with you in terms of how to
Well,
do this Diddy situation. Because you talked about it, but my thing, I'm gonna ask you this, Judge. You think I'm crazy? Judge, I remember Diddy took on one of the most powerful liquor companies on the planet in court and won. Basically, they settled, they paid him off, but it's like it was a Pyrrhic victory because now look what's going on now with him, with the feds and stuff. And I like the fact that you and Dana focus not on the sensationalism with the baby oil, but the substance or lack of substance of the case he's being charged with. Do you think it's a conspiracy with the people, the liquor
yeah, it
company?
is. It's
Okay.
straight up and down. And this is why I say this election is pivotal. 4 more
Mm-hmm.
years of this nonsense, and you won't recognize the country. This
Mm-hmm.
idiot witch queen, this hyena queen, has already been out talking, and the media isn't pushing it. She is actually giving interviews. She says, well, I promise I don't care whether you have your guns legally or not. We're going to come in and take a look where you live.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes on, and it's like, what happened to the Fourth Amendment? This is not just a rank politician. This is somebody that used to be the chief prosecutor in a major American city who ought to know good and damn well what it is about search and seizure. You just can't walk in, but she's promising, don't worry, I promise we're going to come in and see what you're doing. Like, what in the world are you talking about? And see, I look at that and I say that is something that is very important. We have to suppress that, because if we do not, it looks very much like Nazi Germany in 1934. And people today say, how did these Germans let Hitler get, the Nazis get? Well, take a look around. You're looking at it right now. And people are so focused on being anti-Trump that they're sitting and letting the very devil come in play. So aside from Tampon Tim, it's what we're trying to do right now is be careful about what you're doing. It's not what you think it is. You've been propagandized, so you think differently. If I can give a brief explanation.
Yeah, go ahead.
You and I know what germs are, right? Okay, I've got a polished tile floor leading from my front door inside my house. Looks shiny, looks clean. My niece just came over and cleaned it, waxed it. Now, everybody's walking with their feet outside, stepping in old dry dog shit and stuff, and people spit on the sidewalks and stuff. If you drop a food item down there, you say, oh, no, because you know what germs are. If it was 300 years ago, as slick and clean as that is, you just pick it up and eat it because you don't know anything about germs. But you see, once you know these things, you get a different perspective. But if you don't know these things, you act just like you're going to eat it off the floor because you don't know any better. So we do the equivalent of eating off of what looks to be a clean floor when it comes to our politics, and when it comes to our socializing, and when it comes to our economics, because we don't seem to know any better, and we don't want to listen to anybody say, hey, take a look under a microscope. I don't need to do that. You really need to look at what's down on that floor. If you saw it, you wouldn't pick something up off of it. Now, I don't want to look at it. You don't know what you're talking about. See, they don't want to hear it. So when you tell them that there are bugs and germs and little bitty nasty things down there that'll get them sick as hell, they don't want to hear it. So when you say, I'm the doctor, I'm coming in, I know what's down there. Oh, no. See, the sister girl, you just mad because you talking about a black woman. No, the dumb hoe bitch. Hell, she trying to sit there and she got pimped out. Now she trying to turn your ass into a trick. And who's pimping her and who gets the money when you turn the trick? See, people don't get that. And they're so happy. And this is the other thing. When you look at them, you say, you know what? This person doesn't realize how low their self-esteem is. So they're so low down in the self-esteem that they will create something that they think is positive that they can identify with. A whole lot of black folk identify with this fake Negro Kamala Harris because they want something positive to identify with. We just talked about there's no Stokely Carmichael, no H. Rap Brown. There's no Malcolm X, there's no King, there's not all of these brothers that are out there with Black Student Alliance, Panther Party, the various street organizations that were doing something positive. So they're looking for something. That's like, remember about 30 years ago, the starter jackets, everybody wore Oakland Raiders jacket, like Oakland Raiders. I think they're a football team. What city are they in? I don't know. Hell, fool. It says Oakland. Where is Oakland? I don't know. Somewhere in the Midwest? No, it's on the West Coast, fool. Well, who's the quarterback? I don't know. Well, why are you wearing the tag? With everybody wearing one. So they want a sense of identity. And it's a little trick that I studied in propaganda is get something negative and cause your target to identify with it in what they think is a positive fashion. So subconsciously they ignore the negatives, but subconsciously they absorb the negatives. It's a very insidious thing, and that's one of the things we're doing.
Well, Joe, Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So this whole thing about the black thing, you're looking at what has been termed lawfare, Lawfare. It's a new
Mm-hmm.
term. It's fairly good one. It's expressive. It's called abusive process, where you know you are not going to get a conviction that'll stick all the way through the appellate process. But if you have complicit trial judges, complicit attorney generals, and they're all operating for a common cause, you can get away with slapping somebody with a mess that ties them up. And for the most part, most of the people, 90%, can't really afford what it takes to say screw you and stick it out all the way through. Or you do what they
Mm-hmm.
Diddy, which I think is the most atrocious thing. For a long time, since March, he and his lawyer had been cooperating with the feds. He surrendered his passport in March. He came back from an island that did not have an extradition agreement with the United States.
Mm-hmm.
He moved, got himself a place in New York so he could be there, and he'd set up a $50 million 5-way secured bond situation, which is totally adequate. I mean, we're not exactly talking about murder.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Mann Act stuff. And by the way, NBC came up with Mann Act after I had talked about it for a
Of
week.
course.
Dana, nobody had mentioned it. And by the
Mm-hmm.
way, it doesn't say Mann Act in the 14-page indictment for 3 counts, which usually take about 2 or 3 pages. 2,000 bottles of oil and lubricant. What the hell does that have to do with anything? See, that
Right.
was propaganda addressed to the public, because in the federal system, all you have to do is put the defendant on notice of what he's being tried for, get his plea, and that's it. You don't have to tell him anything. You don't have to let him see anything other than any statements that he signed, or a list of any items that you seized from him during a search warrant. And that's about it. When a witness testifies at trial, you get 15 minutes, 30 minutes to look over the transcript of the witness's testimony in front of a grand jury, and it's trial by ambush. So they put 14 pages of fine print nonsense out there trying to influence the public. They've got this beating thing, and okay, that was bad, but what you're talking about is Diddy was playing the role of a pimp. He
Mm-hmm.
was pandering, and he was putting on what some pimps used to do back when. They put on these sex parties, these orgies for the high and mighty who didn't
Mm-hmm.
get their hands dirty. And you would have, in some mansion, you would have a freak scene going on there over in the corner of this room, and something freak at the end of the hallway. And the guest would be invited to watch, jack off, or participate or get involved. And that's some old time stuff that's been going on for years. So in this case, they alleged that it had been going on for approximately 15 years. So you might envision that a lot of people had gone to those parties. Now, what I think Diddy was doing, Puff Daddy, was he was getting himself insurance, because Hollywood tries to blackmail everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It is endemic. The entertainment industry is endemic about blackmailing people. So I know what you have been doing. I know where the closets are that with your skeletons in. So I've got some on you too. So we all keep our mouths shut. But the problem is I have a sneaking suspicion, since Kamala's husband, Mr. Imhoff, was a big time Hollywood lawyer, and she always liked to get her freak on anyway, that over the 15-year period, somebody had been in attendance at some of these freak parties out in California, when they were out in California hanging around with basketball players, Montel and Willie, and a host of others. And I have a sneaking suspicion that it might be embarrassing. You know, his bodyguard's been releasing stuff like, look, this is just a birthday party, but a lot of these people you see in this were at some of these parties, and you're looking at the Kardashians, you're looking at Hillary Clinton, you're looking at the Obamas and some of the other folk, and it's sort of, well, you know, in Chicago, Obama's known as Bathhouse Barry, and you know, Hillary has a long reputation for freak, and you know, we knew who was on the airline list or traveling list to Epstein's Island, and we've looked at that and we've seen who was at the island, and we have a general idea of what was going on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got somebody that had self-protection videos over 15 years of what was going on, and basically they charge him with the Mann Act. So the Mann Act is interesting. I'm very familiar with it. I used to represent a whole lot of pimps and hoes 40 years ago in the Memphis area, and where this fictional P-Valley occurs down in Mississippi, a lot of the dancers and hoes I used to represent work down there in their pimp Memphis, or they were in Arkansas over here, and when they went back and forth across the line every now and then, they would pop them and bust them for Mann Act stuff. I even had one situation, I can't mention the guy's name, but what was going on, he wasn't a drug dealer, but he was a very close associate of a certain drug dealer that the feds were interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So he ran into a lady friend that he used to go to high school with over in West Memphis. And what they did is they left her car parked over in West Memphis, and they drove back over to Memphis in his car. And they went to motel, hotel, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the feds had him under.
Ooh, the feds is watching and they being haters. Why they hating? Players, why y'all hating? Judge breaking it down. Y'all see this stuff is real. It's interesting how we have these blackouts when the truth out. When the judge about to get into the nitty gritty and slice it up and dive deep into the pie. This was happening. This is why it's so important to support grassroots media. Judge, are you there? I can see you, Judge. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes,
but
sir.
I got to come back up, bring you back up so I can see you.
Okay, all right, go ahead, do your thing. And that's why it's important. You see, I mean, like we all be other organizations, other outlets has been under attack for speaking truth. They want to claim that we're not effective, that we're dusties and stuff like that. But why are they so obsessed with us? I really want to know. Why are they obsessed with us? I need to know. No. But know that the marathon continues. But the things about what Judge is talking about, you're not going to hear this on the lamestream legacy so-called media, which is really mockingbirds and not real truth tellers. You know, they suppress truth by any means necessary. So it's very important that in a time of great deceit and deception that people amplify their voices, maximize their voices, fight to be heard, fight, like Donald J. Trump told us when they try to take him out the planet. And what people got to understand, if Kamala is winning, how come they're trying so hard to delete Trump? If Kamala is actually winning, what's the threat? What's the harm in allowing them to compete all the way up to November 5th? And I wouldn't be surprised because like Donald Trump, the security threat is very, very high right now. I heard that they had to in a rally down at the U.S. Mexico border recently. I don't know the details, but they had to end it because his life is on the line. If a man is willing to put his life on the line for what he believes in, regardless if I believe in his perspective, I got to respect that man or woman. So, Judge, I think he's coming back to the dais. Judge, are you there?
Yeah,
we
I'm
can
here.
See you. Okay. All right, they said they always come when you about to dive into the cake, about to cut it up. Here they come with the interference.
Yeah.
Flag on the play, Judge. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I was saying is the feds had this brother under surveillance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were trying to get him to be a witness against somebody he knew pretty well. And he was refusing. So they kept following him around. We found out later. And he was over in West Memphis and he ran into a woman he went to high school with. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to hook up because it was unfinished business, and they left their car over in West Memphis. They rode with him back to Memphis, and they found a hotel motel. They were going to get it on. So they were just about to get into it, and they were in bed, and the feds kicked the door open, and they charged him with the Mann Act, which basically says transporting a female across state lines for illicit purposes. You didn't have to pay for it. You didn't have to beat anybody. It was an old effort to hold down and maintain morality. And the target was Jack Johnson, the first Black world heavyweight boxing champion. And they were after him because he had a white wife, and his white wife had some pretty, by that day's standards, friend girls, and they used to travel around, and they didn't like this big black buck with all these white women hanging around. So they created the FBI to go find out about it, and they passed the Mann Act. And it's interesting because the legislative history, there's an interesting dialogue. One of the senators is saying, well, what the hell's going on? What about if a guy takes his mistress over there across lines? Oh, well, you know, nobody's going to prosecute that. We know how that happens. It's just to get that big buck Negro.
Yes, sir.
And he got busted because he was going with his wife to Europe, and they had to cross a certain southern state that did not recognize interracial marriage. So the FBI, since they weren't armed, were accompanied by local police, and they rushed the train and busted them after they'd spent 15 minutes in that state, and they made a stop. So they prosecuted him. He was convicted. He escaped and was living in France. And his mama wanted him to come back. The same situation with young Dolph. So he tried to sneak back in to visit her. She just wanted to see her baby boy. And of course, they busted him. He did his time. And when he got out, he wound up getting supposedly killed in a car wreck in 1946. But, you know, you don't have to beat anybody. You don't have to pay anybody. You don't have to hire anybody. It's simply the transport. So, brothers, beware of the fact that if they have a target on your back, let's say you got a friend girl lives in Chicago and you haven't seen her in a while, she wants to come pay you a visit and you buy her a plane ticket, they can bust you for the Mann Act if they can get some inference that you're trying to get it on. So it's a law that needs to be repealed. It's 111 years old, I think. And it stinks to high heavens because it had a wrong purpose. It serves the feds with convenience every now and then. Now, that thing you saw him do to that woman in the elevator, well, there's supposed to be a backstory, no excuse, but that's just part of the pimp game. And when people say, man, this is about pimping, man, you know, like, hey, that's part of it. Warm some head, and that's how pimps work. So I don't know whether the lady was being whatever he says, that she took his clothes and ran off, and he got angry, and there was an affair having with him and the security and all of the rest of it.
Well, you know what, Judge? When I say when you saying all this, I'm thinking about what happened to Sam Cooke or whatever they say happened to him. Like allegedly, the prostitute he brought to that hotel and watched took his clothes and wallet, and he ran out. When he was ended up dead in the hotel manager's room office with just his shirt I mean, with this his suit jacket on, that's basically naked. And my thing, if Sam Cooke got caught like that today, he would have been like considered a predator. They would have counseled Sam Cooke if he died the way, because the coroner inquest found him guilty. There was justifiable homicide. This is back in 64, 65.
Yeah, well, see, when I started practicing around here about 8 years after that, and all up through until I didn't have time for it anymore in the pimp game, the whole game seemed to change to something else. Switchboard, they called it. In other words, call girl stuff. And something more refined. That was standard. I was always dealing with pimps who were warming one of their hoes' heads, and the hoes wouldn't prosecute because they thought something was wrong with them and they deserved punishment, which is part of the pimp game. Pimps can't turn a woman into a hoe.
Right.
But her preacher can, because the preacher easily, and it's a real weird thing. Grandma gets stood up next to the pulpit when they have a bake sale, and she gets lauded for selling one slice more cake than anybody else did. And the preacher tells them they're no good, low down sinners, and they're going to hell, etc., except through him. And they have a very low concept of self. The self-esteem is flattened out to zero. And the same thing with the hoe. She's been raised in this kind of environment. Her grandmama, mama, and aunts have been telling her she too pretty, she gonna be a slut, and all these men's gonna be chasing you, blah, blah, blah. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you ask the prostitute or the dancer, she'd tell you that all these men's trying to get in her panties, which all they have to do is pay the fee and they're gonna get in there anyway, but she doesn't look like it. But my pimp, he loves me because he sees me as I am. He calls her no good, filthy, ugly, stupid. And the only one that loves her is him. So that's part of this human thing of wanting to be accepted as you perceive yourself to be. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And when he beats her, she thinks she's evil and vile and wicked and needs punishment. And how can she give the pimp the money that she earns? Well, that's the same thing. She's used to money being begged for or taken, because the preacher gets up and tells mama, grandmama, and all the aunts and friend girls 10 times every Sunday service, 4 times during choir practice and Bible study, another 2 days of the week, because they're trying to keep from going to hell for doing wrong. And he begs them for money, and he wants every dime they can't afford to give him. And the preacher's screwing everybody up in the church, so boy and girl, so it's just a game. So it's an easy transition to a pimp that's working the same game the preacher is. Not all preachers, but we have too many pulpit pimps. And speaking of which, what about T.D. Jakes getting caught calling his wife a slut and a hoe? You know, so it's
so T.D. Jakes, he was one of Diddy close friends. Yeah, well, he was a spiritual advisor.
There you go.
But also, he used to hang around Eddie Long. Bishop Eddie Long was close to Jakes. You know, Bishop, they got him. He got that package at the end and sent him on home. But T.D. Jakes was missing from the last days of Bishop Eddie Long, which is interesting. Birds of a feather, you know.
Months ago, I said, are they going after Diddy to get him for doing wrong, or are they trying to protect some other folk for doing wrong? And I think it's a bit of all of the above. And I noticed something else that I found very peculiar. Mm-hmm. They raided the mansion he had on the West Coast, but on the East Coast down in Florida, they only raided one of the mansions that he had on the property in question. He had 2 of them on the same property. They only raided one of them. So
Hmm.
I also said, why did they bring in the Homeland Security? I said, it's wrong because the FBI got started for this, for the Mann Act stuff. That's what they're on, but they bring Homeland Security. You know what for? They're
What?
trying to hold him incommunicado so he can't communicate what's necessary to say, okay, they double crossed me, bust them, start releasing the other copies of what we do have. So when he's incommunicado, they can do that. If Homeland Security is involved, they'll claim he's involved in international sex trafficking, which brings in supposedly terrorists. But then again, how are you going to talk that with a straight face when your Justice Department that this clown up in New York works for, that's under the Attorney General of the United States, that's a member of the president's cabinet and works for him, you got the southern border wide open, so anybody in the world who wants to come into the United States, this needs to go through Mexico. And they can come into the United States, carry up military grade explosives, whatever they want to carry in, anthrax, they can carry in syphilis, HIV, all kinds of stuff. You can get sexual predators. You don't care because the border's wide open. And the illegals are raping American women and children, and drugs are being sold, and cartels of not even infiltrated, just walk right in.
Right.
And, you know, it seems kind of strange, doesn't it, that you're worried about the international aspect of sex trade when you got the border wide open to sex traders who can come in, and they're doing it while they're here. So, you know,
Judge, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and by the way, you know what that's about?
What is it about? Tell us.
Under American law, as it is, if a person is granted asylum, there's an interesting thing. After 5 years, they automatically become an American citizen. They don't have to go through the classes or anything else. And ordinarily, see, the requirement is that you have to go through an American embassy where they vet you there and figure out, is this really somebody who needs to be granted asylum? But now, the president under the U.S. Constitution has absolute authority to pardon or commute any sentence.
Yes.
So the next president, if it's Harris, all she has to do is issue a blanket pardon for all of the illegals who seem to be shipped into battleground states. All right. So she pardons them. Now they're no longer criminals. She also pardons everybody that is giving them sanctuary, which under federal law is harboring a fugitive, because somebody who's crashed the border is per se a federal fugitive. Now, the next thing that's interesting is this. As the chief diplomat of the United States of America under the U.S. Constitution, she can grant the diplomatic immunity status. She can declare them to be, guess what, entitled to asylum, and she can make the date retroactive, since it's impossible to tell when anyone came over, to the presumptive date, which is about 3 years ago, which means she gets in, if she declares the date from which the asylum is effective for all of the unknown dates, she can set it back 3 years. That means that since they're pardoned, they can now vote 2 years into her term, which is just in time for the midterm elections next go around, which means, of course, they'll be grateful and they will stuff, since there are 50 billion of them, stuff the halls of House
so
and
horrible.
Senate with Democrats, and they'll control it. And meanwhile, what are they saying? Freedom of speech is not absolute. Misinformation is so dangerous, it must be controlled. we're going to set up a Bureau of Misinformation. Both Waltz and Harris and AOC have been talking that poison. And of course, guns are so dangerous. She's already issued a thing talking about technology and trying to sneak in another little step on gun control. Biden just signed an order yesterday. And Harris is talking about she's going to, of course, have people come into your homes to see if you have guns. How are you going to get probable cause for that? I don't know, but they're just going to come in. So there's the Fourth Amendment to be free in your person and property from inappropriate searches and seizures. Second Amendment would go out. Then they're talking about getting rid of the Fifth Amendment, and they're talking about, we have to open this up where we allow anybody to come in and forget why we have Homeland Security in the first place. I think it's called 911, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And they had to go through months worth of preparatory stuff, and they hijacked 4 airplanes and, went through all of that. Why do you have to do that when you see person after person? They're military age Chinese males walking across with heavy backpacks that can carry enough military grade explosives to bring down a skyscraper anywhere in the country, or start a huge conflagration at an oil refinery, or carry in their equivalent of Stinger missiles. Nobody's checking them. And get on a government bus and get taken to your target. It's been here 3 years, and China's talking about in 2027 they have to be ready to take Taiwan by force if necessary, but they're going to get it. So what in the devil's supposed to happen? Also, most of these cranes are lifts that deal with the containers on container ships.
Yeah.
And then 90% of them were made in China. And now the one thing not to talk about in the media is they found some interesting, what appear to be communication devices that are inextricably installed in these cranes, these gantries, and they don't know what they're for, except they're some kind of communications devices, but they can't get them out without disabling the device, or rather the gantries. So what is this? You've allowed the Chinese to get controlling interest in a lot of the American port systems in terms of the infrastructure. And we gave away all of our ammunition. The Pentagon has been writing papers saying, hey, look, we only have 4 to 5 days worth of heavy ammunition if we have to get it on with the Chinese. This isn't third world, and you've been giving that stuff away to Ukraine and Israel. So we're down to maybe 3 days worth of ammo that we need. And you didn't let us get the amphibious assault ships we've been begging for years. So there's very limited ability to transport Marines and Army units in the South. Well, not South, but the Northeast Pacific up there in South China Sea Bay.
Yes, sir.
And you've got a big live problem. What are you going to do if they decide to deal with it? We don't have but 120 F-22 fighters, and only about 60 of them are fully operational. So you have, the Chinese have about 1,500 Generation 5 stealth fighters themselves. We have 65, 70 that are operable. So how are you going to take this on to get it over there anyway? And unless we go all out nuclear, which everybody respects, we are not going to win a conventional slugfest with somebody like China. Now, I don't think we're going to go nuclear. Actually, that would be a fool move. But
right.
Remember World War II, they did not use gas, though they first used gas in World War I. We used nukes in World War II, but nobody's used them anywhere since. So maybe some things are just so bad humans don't want to use them on each other, like they didn't want to use gas in World War II. But we can't take China on in the conventional war over there and prevail.
I
So
mean, but Judge, they already infiltrated us in Walmart. They buying all this real estate over here. I believe in military bases. We already been compromised. You know what I'm saying? It's all because Trump. I think it's interesting that people are so like low vibration or misinformed or they ahistorical. Because Kamala said in the debate that the U.S. military leaders don't respect Trump. The reason why they don't respect him because he's not a warmonger. Like all the people like Dick Cheney's and John Bolton's, they warmongers, they war hawks, they war profiteers. Trump is a businessman who believes in dealing in peace and prosperity. He want to make a deal with China and Russia and North Korea. We don't want to bum him out the map. And he's a threat to the deep state. He's a threat to the republic for which they think they stand. But also with the, I was thinking about what you were saying about the Mann Act and who's being charged or has been charged and the reason why they created it. I'm saying, where's the prominent white man that's been charged or ever been charged with the Mann Act? Even Lucky Luciano, who was caught down in Hot Springs, Arkansas on the run, he was charged with compulsory prostitution, 62 counts he was convicted of, but there's no mention of him being charged with a Mann Act. And it was a black woman, Eunice Carter, who was one of the first, she probably was the first black female assistant DA in New York City for Thomas Dewey. She gave him the blueprint to take down one of the most powerful mob bosses in this country history. But they also are weaponizing black people again to take down people like Trump, to take down the NYC mayor Eric Adams, to take down even rappers down in Atlanta. So what is it about? What's going on here, Judge? Why can't we just abolish the Mann Act? Because it's racial profiling at the highest level.
I think it should be abolished. It's 111 years old. It deals with an effort to supposedly to justify it is to control morality, but
Right.
basically it was to do something about what they thought was going to occur based on the influence of Jack Johnson. By the way, James Earl Jones played Jack Johnson in a very movie. If
Great
you
White
ever
Hope.
see it, you should look at it.
It was called Great White Hope, right? Was it called Great White Hope? Okay, yeah, it was a good movie.
You should look at it. And it kind of breaks down what the Mann Act was about with what they were trying to do to get him and the intrigue to set it up. That's how J. Edgar Hoover got his start. They put him in the brothels in New York, and he was supposed to be a third floor fancy boy, a fair-skinned Negro at the time, fancy. And he befriended a lot of the hoes up in these brothels. And he got the blackmail information on a lot of white politicians. Now, when they did it again, this is in New York. See, New York is closely proximate to Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. You can get on a train, could back
right.
conveniently than now. So it was designed to get black folk, but also use the unique circumstances of New York to get blackmail on other politicians that could be controlled. You realize at the time that the Democrats were in party with Woodrow Wilson, and they were trying to overcome the Republican dominance in national politics at that time. So they were getting blackmail information on Republican officials in New York. Right. And J. Edgar Hoover used that to blackmail people in power and authority. So he wound up being appointed head of the FBI, and everybody conveniently forgot the fact that he was a part breed Negro. And by the way, at that point, the FBI couldn't carry guns, so Hoover used some more blackmail information so that the FBI could be armed. Now, their main task, aside from catching Negroes who might be going across state lines with white women, became a delegation to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the task of monitoring the legal production of alcohol. alcohol. This is right after Prohibition got started. So the
Mhm.
FBI and its expansion is inextricably caught up with alcohol. An interesting side story is the qualifications for being an FBI agent were two: either be a certified public accountant. What is with these damn balloons? Every damn
Mhm.
thing I've been on for the last 2 months has had these damn balloons released. I know you aren't doing it. Dana doesn't do it. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
it's interesting. Well, Judge, you already know they watching you. You are
Yeah,
under surveillance. You be one of the first people that put in them concentration camps or whatever
no,
they're gonna
ain't
do.
put me in a concentration camp because I ain't going quiet. I've had a
I
long,
believe you too, but
I've
they
had a
coming.
long, exciting life, and I'll go to Valhalla. Shit.
But Joe, I gotta ask you this. I think it's very important. I think Eric Adams can use your help. 'Cause I think it's weird that last year, September 23rd, 2023, that the mayor of New York gave the key to the city to Diddy on September 23rd of 2023. And look at where we at September 27, 2023. They both are facing federal charges. And these are black men. I'm just worried about everything has been weaponized against black men. Like even the FBI, I believe, should be defunded or abolished because it was formed to get Jack Johnson. They hired the first black FBI agents to neutralize Marcus Garvey. They helped COINTELPRO to break up our movement, and the gun that killed Dr. King came from the FBI. So what good is it, the FBI, to black people, particularly
I don't,
black men?
I don't know, but the Black Caucus seems to be in love with them.
Man, I can't trust the FBI, man. I just don't. Even when Ruby Ridge, Ruby Bridge or Ruby Ridge and Waco. I remember when Waco happened, that was suspect because the government set the house on fire or whatever.
Well,
I mean, you had the footage.
I'll tell you something else too. There is my information is that there is a minor war going on inside the FBI from the straight agents versus the San Francisco rainbow crowd that is thoroughly infiltrated the organization.
Mm.
So
They always been there though, cause J. Edgar Hoover, that's they found their father,
yeah,
right?
I know that. Hoover and Colson, his boyfriend, the
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of poisonous what's been going on, but why in the world, with the people you are causing to hate the country in the Middle East, particularly in this Gaza situation, why in the world, with all of the people who are pissed off that we are pushing what we are pushing, this rainbow cult over in Ukraine and around the world, why in the world, with the Russians getting angry about the whole thing, why in the world that a lot of people around the planet are upset with us pushing these neo-Nazis in Ukraine, why in the world do you have a wide open border where anybody can walk in? It doesn't make any damn sense at all. None at all. I mean, even if you were saying, oh, we're going to be warm hearted and we're going to save our souls. We've done the Negro so bad, so we need to redeem ourselves so Jesus will take us home to heaven. We're going to go in and have all of these people vet all of these applicants, anybody who is of good citizenship and not possessed of some horrible, incurable disease. We will expedite them becoming citizens. You just don't open the damn border up when you have all of these enemies.
Well, what's the point of the Patriot Act, though? I thought we gave up our freedoms to be secure. I mean, you're not having a secure border. This 20 plus years with the Patriot Act. What's the point of the Patriot Act then? If we're not going to secure the border?
Here's what the Patriot Act did. It undid what had been put in place in reaction to the King assassination. When they had all of the hearings in the 70s, it developed that J. Edgar Hoover and his FBI were violating American law very seriously, but the specific things they were doing outside of the murders and stuff like that that have been criminal for a long time, the late 70s, 76, mostly saw Congress pass a series of laws that made what Hoover and his FBI were doing illegal, specifically illegal. What you got with the Patriot Act is that got changed back to the way Hoover was doing it, and what Hoover was doing was made legal. The Patriot Act is really kind of poisonous, but Homeland Security was supposed to be to defend the country against, restore or protect or coordinate efforts where the country suffered disasters, either natural or man-made. 9/11 was considered a man-made disaster with what happened in New York. Right. You're supposed to deal with foreign terrorist infiltration. You're supposed to deal with foreign trafficking back and forth in criminal enterprise. Now you have a situation which is kind of weird. Like, I lived in a place, Ojai, California, and we had some heavy rain, so all of the roadways into Ojai collapsed. So for about 2 weeks, you couldn't get in and out of where I lived at all. They had to send a helicopter to get me for doing the show. And it was interesting, but Homeland Security handled that. So where do we get from Homeland Security doing that to pimping and procuring for sex orgies in 2024? Mm-hmm. But where do we get from that to wide open border? Come on in. We're not going to stop you. We're not going to check you. It's an open border. Okay, well, even in Europe, they'll give you a cursory check to see if you're carrying weapons or explosives. You know, what the devil.
Yes, sir. Well, this is the thing, though. Like, I'm getting back to that.
They are not even walking through a metal detector. Now, you are a born and American citizen. You're over 40, been there your whole life. You have an honest background. And when you get on the damn plane to come back to America, you run through a metal detector. Right. When you get back to the United States, you have to go through customs. But these idiots have just got anybody can come in, walk in, carry in whatever the hell you want, and nobody checks you.
But I
got off an international plane. Your passport, please. I'm showing my passport. I've been here a long time. Ain't lived nowhere else. And these characters can just walk in without showing passport ID, a damn thing.
Well, they can have zero credit history and own a home within 2 years of being here.
Yeah.
With no credit history.
Yeah. And the next scandal, I didn't even touch on it. You know, now have you heard about how effective Kamala has been as borders are? Hey, what?
And we got gangs taking over cities and apartment complexes.
Yeah,
now we're talking about it.
The other one, that was one thing she got in a specific assignment to take care of. President can delegate that to his cabinet. She failed miserably. Now, what else did she get designated as being in charge of? Biden actually said when he announced it, he said, if she'll accept it, I'm putting my vice president, Kamala Harris, in charge of this project. And she said, I accept. And what was that? $42 billion to set up internet connections for rural America. Not one damn connection has been set up. The one organization that was doing something was associated with Elon Musk. And what they were doing cost about $1,300 per home on average to set up the whole system. This was before they set this $42 billion setup, but they still had a small contract. They took the contract, and to fill the balance of what X had, that's Musk thing, they were paying out $106,000 a house to put something in instead of $1,300. And now it develops that the $42 billion has completely disappeared. Nobody can account for it. And they made one bad mistake. Marjorie Taylor Greene's district would have been a huge beneficiary. And as she was saying this week, ain't nobody in my district got nothing. Where'd the money go? What happened to it?
It's like, remember, like, about Donald Rumsfeld when he was running the Pentagon, how they $8 billion went missing over in Iraq or something. You remember that? Like $8 billion or something went missing and never been found or accounted for. And like that, it's like they running these Ponzi schemes. The government runs Ponzi schemes, but they want to punish the small players. But the big fish get to swim as long as they want to in the biggest of oceans without any problems. Like even with Eric Adams, I believe his problem began when he started pushing back against being a sanctuary city and started saying we can't do this no more. And he was a good Democrat on the plantation. Yes, boss, we sick, boss. And then I'll say he said, I don't think we should go this way. You undermining the citizens and the infrastructure. You get these weird charges. I saw that press conference. Like, you throwing the book at him for upgrades on a plane and hotel and luxury meals. He's stealing millions of dollars. The way, how is this a federal? Everybody does it, right, Judge? Help me understand. I'm trying to help us understand.
When you have major cities around the world, they exchange mayors. So rather than New York picking up the tab, you're going over to Turkey. Turkey's not going to look at you if you come in coach class, like, who the hell are you? We don't need to pay attention. You lost face. So you ride first class. And if the host wants to upgrade your ticket, so damn what? They do it all the time. Now, I'm not saying that there might not have been money laundering or kickbacks or stuff like that. I don't know. But the point is come on now, talking about something stupid. From my perspective, that U.S. attorney is dumb as fuck. You know what he did? He set out all of these details. There are only 4 counts, but it's 53 pages.
Man, what is that, man?
Wait a minute. But the problem is this. If you allege it or you claim you can prove it in your opening statement, if you're in front of a jury and you don't prove each and everything you claim you can prove, you lose the case. Now, see, this is what's so stupid, but also what is so insidious. That indictment is not what it's supposed to be, because the indictment is only required to inform the defendant of what he's being charged with and when it supposedly occurred. Now, your typical indictment, let's take Diddy's case. It's 3 counts that goes on for 14 pages. Talks about him masturbating, which is irrelevant. It talks about bottles of oil or containers of lubricant, which is irrelevant. That's for.
Okay, we got back, Judge. Hello, Judge. Can you hear us? Can you hear? Yeah. Judge is like, Judge still in the building. Judge is still in the building. We're gonna get through this. We gonna make it. We gonna make it. We gonna make it happen. Thank you, Judge. We 2 hours in deep in here. He started talking about the baby oil and stuff like that, and the lubricants, and Diddy gonna Diddy, and ain't no pity in the heart of the Diddy. Yes, sir. We can hear you. Can you hear us? Hear me, rather?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Oh, I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you about to see what they do. Is funny how they do that. They take a commercial break or something.
Yeah. Now, like I said, I've had clients that got charged with the Mann Act.
Oh, there you go. Woo, Lord have mercy. What's going on? What's going on? Y'all think this stuff is like, it's just technical glitches. This is the government at its finest. This is like social media. It's the new COINTELPRO. We all being programmed. We all on different programs, but the show will go on. The marathon continues, but this is what happens because Judge Joe Brown, like you said, on every platform,
Testing 1, 2.
Yes, sir. He upgraded his tech on his end. No, Judge got money. He got pockets.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I
sir.
can't
Can you
hear
hear us?
you.
Okay, you got to come back
Let
in, I
me
guess.
duck back and come back
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, but this is like, y'all don't understand. This is entertainment, but it's not really entertainment. This is like, we sounded out the call, man. This is like, this gonna get worse if the wrong people get put in place. If the wrong puppets get put in place and got their strings get pulled, anybody who is speaking out and going against the status quo, they are enemies of this so-called state of disarray that we are in. And we, the people, must realize we must take back the narrative. We must reclaim our power and reclaim our time. And shout out to Judge Joe Brown, because people want to character assassinate people. They want to, bring down Judge. Judge don't have to do the stuff that he's doing for us to make himself accessible. I'm not the world's biggest platform by any means, but at the same time, Judge see the importance of connecting with people where they at, and he has such a brilliant mind and knows so much information about the law, and just have the experiences. He has so many different experiences and lives that he has led. He has led a full purpose-driven life. Hopefully, we get him back on very soon. But even when We All Be, like, I'm on We All Be TV 2, please subscribe, folks, to We All Be TV 2 while you can, because We All Be TV has been compromised. I put a lot of blood and sweat and tears into that channel, and they demonetized the platform. See, Candace Owens is just now going through with a lot of us, lesser known small content creators have been experiencing for years. They started with me back in 2018. They removing videos with Dick Gregory talking about, just critiquing story narratives. And he didn't do anything. He didn't say anything inflammatory. But like my Uncle Herb, who told me, whose birthday's today, we spoke at length about a couple hours several days ago. He said, Ron, you're just inflammatory, Ron Jr. You're inflammatory. Not because I say degrading or demeaning or disrespectful things, because I provoke thought in people. I provoke people to think about things in a different way and from a different perspective. And so when you have elders that are like Judge Joe Brown, who make themselves available, resources, time, experience, and wisdom, you got to pay respect to that. So it's very important, man. This is, y'all think it's entertainment, but nah, we're fighting. We're on the front lines fighting for our lives, because these are indeed, in the words of the great Alex Jones, info wars, info wars, info wars. Judge, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you. Now, by
Okay.
the way, as to who you should vote for this November, this is an illustration of why you do not need to vote for the Harris Walz ticket. See, they're getting away with this as bold as they can be. And my phone says there's an unauthorized device that is in on this line.
It's
So
probably
I
them, the
told
three
you
letter
what I'm
people.
having to do to get through, so I could even get through with what I'm using for a hotspot. Apparently, they found it. So anyway,
And you
yeah,
laugh
what I,
about, Judge, but they are really blocking you. They really trying
yeah,
to stop you from getting that message out. You're a very powerful man, and we thank you for your service to this country.
thank you. See,
Yeah.
what I was saying is this, or I told you I represented people that got busted for the Mann Act.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
what I'd get in their indictments would be, on about such and such date, the defendant did cause to be transported for illicit purposes a female across state lines, specifically from West Memphis, Arkansas to Memphis, Tennessee. And that's all you'd get. Well, what are you talking about? When did this occur? On or about such and such dates. What are they talking about? I don't know, man. What, like, all you're entitled to, if you file your motions, unless you get leave of the court for an extended period, you have to file all your motions within 15 days of arraignment, which means everything on the defense side has got to be hustled at breakneck speed. Meanwhile, the government has had months or years to prepare their case. And you have to have all kinds of hearings to get a slight clue as to what the hell they're talking about. So these characters put 14 pages worth of stuff about masturbation, lubricant, and detailing, events that aren't even part of the indictment, just inflammatory stuff, and then having a 30-minute press conference to explain to the public what you're doing. The feds don't do that kind of stuff. What are they doing? And then they turn around with the mayor, and the same federal U.S. attorney for that.
Damian Williams. Yeah,
Yeah,
Damian Williams.
Up, but he looks suspect to me. I swear to God. Ain't gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
So he details at great length all of this rundown. And I'm saying, wait a minute, this again, what is going on here? This is not how they do it. They just get bare notice, the bare minimum. And the court oftentimes gets put in a position of telling them they have to be more specific about what they're talking about. In this case, they just lay it out for 53 pages for 4 counts that would have ordinarily taken 2 pages to set forth. Between the following dates, the defendant did accept payments, blah, 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 that amounted to, and you can list them. Maybe you can do that without the long explanation as to what it means. So, I mean, it's like, what's going on?
Judge Joe Brown's all-new barbecue sauce and seasoning. Justice in the form of flavor.
Law firms will take this as a retainer.
What? It must be a law firm where they hungry as hell. Now you gonna help me with this parole I'm dealing with?